So, we generally speaking write it like this, but it would be the same thing as if you had like x squared over a squared plus b squared, that's not a b, that's a lie, plus y squared over b squared equals 1. This one is just with the center is at 0, 0. And this is if your center is not at 0, 0. So if we kind of look at this first example, you'll notice that we just have an x squared and a y squared value. We don't have any other like b values, so to say. And we kind of need those b values to complete the square. So for this example, we don't have to complete the square because we don't have that b value. What we do, however, have to do is we have to get kind of our letters on one side, our variables on one side, our x squared and y squared, and we have to get our constants on the other. And in the end, we have to make sure that it's equal to 1, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So when we have this kind of question, x squared plus 4y squared minus 64 equals 0, the first thing in this type of question that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and subtract or add 64 to each side of the equation so that I've got my variables on one side and my constant on the other. And again, you don't need to show it at this point in time. We need to change sides of the equation. You should know that you need to add 64 to both sides. So now we've got it started. With the ellipses, another thing that you need to notice is that there are no numbers out in front of our x squareds or our y squareds. So we've got to deal with that. And it also equals 1. And right now we have it equal to 64. Well, how do I turn 64 into 1 besides subtracting 63? That would be not smart. What's another way I could make this a 1? Divide by 64. So if I divide this side by 64, that gives me 1, right? But in mathematics, if you divide one thing by 64, it means you need to divide everything by 64. So now we divide by 64. So if you look at the first one, x squared over 64, we're in good shape. So we've got x squared over 64 plus, now you'll notice that we've got 4 and 64. Well, we can just treat that as 4 over 64, which can be reduced. 4 goes into 64 16 times. So this can be reduced to y squared over 16. And 64 divided by 64 is 1. And now we have it in the form that we want it to have. Looks like that. So now if we wanted to do the center, and you're not going to have to do this today. The only thing you have to do today is write it in this form. But if we asked you to find the center, from yesterday, the center's at 0, 0. There's no change to the x values. What's my a value? Plus or minus square root of 64 is 8. And my b value is plus or minus 4. And then that tells you that 8 tells you that you go, because it's underneath the x value, it would tell you that you go left 8, right 8, and put dots. And then the 4, because it's underneath the y squared, would tell you you go up 4, down 4. Those are your covertices, and you put it through there. And just kind of remember, we talked about it a little bit definition-wise yesterday. We said the longer of the two, since this is bigger, this is going to be your vertices. Your vertices in this case would be 8, 0 and negative 8, 0. And your covertices would be 0, 4 and 0, negative 4. But you don't need to know that. That's just whatever. So let's look at another one like that. That one's too much like that one. Let's go with this one. So we've got 9x squared plus y squared minus 36 equals 0. So again, I'm kind of looking at it going, I don't have like 6x. I don't have like 3y. So that's a good thing. That means I don't have to complete the square. It's already in good shape. So what am I going to do first?
Add 36 and divide by 36.
Okay, so 2 steps in one. So we're going to add 36 to both sides. So that's what I have. And then we have to set it equal to 1, so we're going to divide by 36. And then reduce fractions. How many times does 9 go into 36? 4. So that's x squared over 4 plus y squared over 36 equals 1. And that's your solution, and you're done. I mean, again, that's all you have to do today. You don't have to list the center. You don't need the a values. You don't need the b values. You don't need the graph. You're not going to do any of that. We're just putting it in general kind of form. Good with that? Okay, now, obviously, that's the easier of the two ways to do these. Where they become a little bit more complicated is when now we have kind of these b values sitting in there. But we've completed the square already. I mean, we worked on completing the squares with parabolas. We worked on completing the squares with circles. This is nothing we haven't done already. It's just kind of a reminder. So we've got x squared plus 4y squared minus 20x plus 48y plus 180 equals 0. Okay, so now we just kind of think about what we need to do. First thing we need to do is we need to kind of put things in order. So we're going to put our x's together first. So we're going to go x squared minus 20x. Now we know we've got to complete the square, so we're just going to go ahead right now and complete the square, because our ultimate goal is to have something plus or minus x squared over something. Remember how we do this. We take half of our b value, so half of 20 is 10, and then we square it. Half of 20 is 10. 10 squared is 100, so we're going to put plus 100. Now,
Drop it down by 10.
what's that? Yeah, and we could write this right now if you want to write that right now. This would be x minus 10 squared. It's the sine and half of the b value. Takes on the sine of the b value and half of it. Now we got to do the y squared. Hey. So we're going to put plus, but now let's kind of think about what we did when we looked at that y. When we look at y squared, we got 4y squared sitting there. Did we ever complete a square with anything other than 1 in front of our y squared value? No, we didn't. What did we do? What do I have to do with that 4? Factor it out. So if we factor that 4 out, I'm going to put a 4, and then I'm going to put a parentheses. Now I'm going to look at just my y values. If I take a 4 out of 4y squared, what do I have left? Y squared. Plus, and it's a plus because this right here. If I look at my other one, what do I have to do with 48? Divide by 4. 48 divided by 4 is 12. So that's 12y. Now we can complete this square. Half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So now this factors into plus 4 times y. Half of 12 is 6. So that factors into 4 times y plus 6 squared. Okay, so now I've dealt with all of the x's and y's. I've got that 180 sitting on there. We had to do what? What do we need to do to that? Add it or subtract it? It's plus 180 this time. So it's going to equal negative 180. Okay, but I've added things on, and you can't forget that we've added things on. I've added 100 on.
Oh, you, what is it?
Do I add 100 on the other side, or do I subtract it? Add it. Since it's the other side of the equation, I have to add it. So I have to add 100. From this 100 right here, I have to add that 100 right there. What else do I have to add on there? 4 times 36. Because remember, I factored out this 4. So I have to pull this in there. 4 times 36 is, I don't know, 144. And again, why is it 144? Because we have to fill this into each place. Now when we do that, we've got negative 180 plus 100 plus 144, and that's equal to 64. Now what? Divide by 64. We have to set it equal to 1. It's a lot. And this stuff's hard. But it's stuff you guys can do. So that's x minus 10 squared over 64 plus.
Oh, would it be, oh yeah, we just, what is that again? Like 62? So y plus 6 squared over 16? What?
How many times is it's 16, I think, isn't it? Y plus 6 squared over 16 equals 1. And that's your answer. Okay. There's a lot to it. And this isn't just something that's going to melt into your brains, unfortunately. You know, you've got one really, really hard test left. This next one is not the easiest test in the world. But the good thing is we've kind of been building all week. If we review all week with this stuff. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Let's go with 4x squared plus y squared plus 8x minus 6y minus 23. What do you want to do first? The x's? Okay, so what do I have to factor out of the x's? 4. So I'm going to factor a 4 out of the x's. That gives me x squared plus,
Plus 9, right? No. Plus 8x.
is it 8x, or do I have to factor out a 4 out of the 8? Should be 2x. 4 times 2 is 8. Now we have to complete the square. Half of 2 is? 1 squared is? 1. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Plus y squared. We've got y. There's no value out in front of it. So minus 6y plus, have to complete the square. Half of 6. 3 squared is? 9. Equals 23 plus
1 plus 9. Wait, minus 1?
plus 4.
What?
Remember, you have to distribute that 4 in there. And now plus 9. And again, that's a common error. It's a huge common error.
Wait, I have a question. How do you get 1?
Half of 2?
But how do you get 2? Half of 4? Or half of 8?
Half of 8. Well, because we factored out a 4, right?
Huh?
So this would, if I factored this back in, it would be 4x squared
Yeah.
plus 8x. And so if we factor a 4 out, this becomes x squared plus 2x. So if I factor this first part, it becomes 4 times x plus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 36. Divide by 36. 4 goes into 36 9 times plus y minus 3 squared over 36 equals 1. There is our solution. Center, if we asked you for the center's at negative 1, 3. The A value would be plus or minus 3. The B value would be plus or minus 6. You could make an argument that those should be switched around A values probably should always be bigger than the B value. But remember, we talked about yesterday, this just means the Y value is going to move plus and minus 6. And this means the X value is going to move plus or minus 6. Don't need to get overly hung up on those values. One more. I'm going to have you try this one on your own. See how you do. 16x squared plus y squared plus 64x plus 6y plus 9 equals 0. Go ahead and see if you can put that in standard form of an ellipse. I am evidently I'm actually, well, I just didn't give it time to quack. I'm just a popular guy today. You know, so realistically, and I said it, if I write it like this, sometimes they become a little bit more understandable as to what I did. I kind of skipped a step. If you're good skipping the step, skip the step. But so if I rewrite this now, putting the x's together, the y together, now you can kind of look at this and say, okay, well, we can't do that. So we can't complete the square. We could, but we haven't done it. So we're going to take a 16 out of the x squared and the 64x. And now we're going to complete this square. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. And then we've got plus y squared plus 6y. Half of 6 is 3 squared is 9. So then that was negative 9 plus 9 plus, not 4, 64. Yeah, again, make sure you distribute that over there. So now we factor. So that's 16x. The b value is plus 4, so half of plus 4 is plus 2 squared. Plus half of plus 6 is plus 3 squared. That's going to equal 64. Negative 9 plus 9 plus 64. Divide everything by 64. So you get x plus 2 squared over 4 plus y plus 3 squared over 64 equals 1. That's an...
64 because 16 times 4. Remember, you distributed all this stuff.
That then is your solution. Okay? It's a lot of work. And it's not going to be the easiest, and practice is kind of what this is going to take. So you've got your assignment sitting there and completing the square. Again, biggest error that's going to happen here is you guys are going to do okay completing the square. Just make sure you distribute that 16 back in when you add to the other side. Okay? We are going to do this again. We're doing hyperbolas tomorrow. The only difference between the formulas for a hyperbola and for an ellipse is the sign for our y squared or our x squared. Tomorrow that's going to be a minus instead of a plus. And then we're going to do completing the square with those on Thursday, which is the same stuff as this, but that's going to be a minus, and it creates just a little issue because completing the square always creates a little bit of an issue.